Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Arsenal preview show, our show in which we look ahead to the next Arsenal fixture. Arsenal are back in Premier League action this weekend with a chance, of course, to solidify their place at the top of the Premier League table. They take on Wolves at the Emirates Stadium, and it's an interesting weekend because, of course, there are some other fixtures being played at the top end of the table. We've got Newcastle and Man United playing one another. We've got Man City and Spurs playing one another. So some very interesting fixtures where Arsenal can hope to take advantage of that, like they did, or rather like they only just managed to do, of course, against Brentford. Very, very close to not taking advantage of it, but thankfully Kai Havertz stepping up with a goal right at the end of the game. And of course, then a massive win in midweek against Lens in the Champions League, confirming top spot in the Champions League group, meaning that Arsenal will face a runner-up in the last 16 and have a dead rubber game, of course, between that game against Aston Villa and the one against Brighton as well. As always, with these preview shows, we are joined by our fantastic cast of members from the Discord server. Let's introduce you to them now. First of all, it's James. James, how you doing? You good? You well?
I'm doing all right. It's a little cold here, but I think that's kind of the same in just about all parts of the world right now. How about you?
Yeah, it's currently 1 degree here.
I don't know what that means for me. So
you double it, you add 30, so 32 for you. That would be. So yeah, pretty cold. But we're braving it, and the heating's been on as long as feasibly possible, and just trying to keep ourselves toasty as we can. Also joined by Garrett. How you doing, Garrett? You good? You well?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, like both of you, it's a bit cold over here, but yeah, getting through. Looking forward to the weekend. Yeah,
absolutely, indeed. And lastly, making up our quartet this evening, we've got Dave. How are you doing, Dave? You good? You well?
Doing well.
Can you hear me? See me? There we go. There he is. Just sorting out the microphone. Love it. Lovely stuff. Good to have you all three with us today. Really appreciate all of you jumping in, tuning in for today's show. And those joining us live in the chat box, those listening on Catch Up or watching on Catch Up as well. Thank you so much for doing so. Please do drop a like, subscribe, all of that usual stuff. James, we start with you. Wolves this weekend. We've obviously come off the back of a very important win against Brentford, but also then a very dominant performance against Lens. Are you expecting a similar display to what we saw in midweek, or do you think it's going to be a lot cagier?
I think everybody feels like we've been able to play more freely in Europe because they're not holding a low block against us. So I fully expect Wolves to hold a low block. So I don't think it's going to be as free-flowing, but I do think that we should still win comfortably. Especially with Wolves now have a couple injuries, and was it Lamina that can't play this game?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to definitely help us in the match.
Yeah, no Lamina, no Gomez, potentially no Ait-Nouri as well. He could be injured. Neto is not expected to be fit either for this one. So there's a lot of injury issues and suspension problems for Wolves. Garrett, Arsenal themselves have got Kai Havertz on 4 yellow cards. He could be in for a suspension. In a way, is it weird that we kind of maybe want him to get a yellow because it means he would miss Luton and then be available for Brighton, Villa and Liverpool after that? Is that too cheeky?
No, I think it's a decent thing to expect. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if Arteta will, ever tell him to go out and get a yellow.
Just go on, Kai.
I don't know. Obviously, I think we'll need him for those big games coming up. So, yeah, look, if we're going to get a tactical one, I think it's definitely, game to do it. Missing Luton, we could be eating our words in a few days' time. I hope not.
I remember last year, Gabriel Jesus and Saliba were on 4 yellow cards for what felt like 10 games, and they managed to avoid it, to be fair. This season, I think the closest to Havertz are I think White's got 2 or 3, maybe. I think Saka's got 2 as well. We seem not to be getting anywhere near the amount of cards that we were getting last season. I know we've had a red in Tomiyasu at Palace, but that was pretty ridiculous when he got it. Do you feel like discipline is something that has improved significantly under Arteta?
Yeah, I think so. Big time. You just look at some of the foolishness we got ourselves involved in kind of at the start of Arteta's tenure and kind of, end of Emery and stuff. Like, some of the stuff was just disastrous. But yeah, no, it's improved big time. And it's great to see, really. I remember, you'd always expect a Xhaka red card. It was just you'd be ticking down every week. You wouldn't get one. You're like, it's going to come soon. So, now I don't think there's anyone that you look at and you're like, this guy, he's taking time off, I think that's credit to Arteta as well, big time.
Yeah, absolutely. There isn't really that character. We haven't got like Granit Xhaka. We haven't got like a Mustafi, in the squad anymore. And Xhaka was always last season, especially, was an absolute asset to the team. But there was always that feeling that he was one moment, one tackle away from getting a red card, and he had that in him, and he never felt like he was going to change either. And now we don't have that necessarily. I mean, Gabriel maybe is the closest that we've got. He's obviously had red cards during his time, but he's mellowed out and become a lot more consistent, I think. So yeah, you're right. We don't really have that type as well. And Benny says in the chat, Declan Rice has 0 yellow cards this season, which is worth a mention as well. It just shows you how accurate and kind of, I suppose, finessed his tackling has been. But Dave, Wolves as a side, they've caused us problems in the past. I remember there was the whole Ruben Neves celebration police. There's been a bit of a narrative between us and them over the last few years or so. But how much of a threat do you think they pose to us in tomorrow's game?
I feel pretty good. They've had some success this year, but that was when they had Neto. And without him and without a couple of midfielders, I like our chances. I really like our chances if we can score within the first 10, 15 minutes and open things up like we
do. You know how many times we've done that this league season?
Maybe none. I don't know.
Once. We've done it once in the first 20 minutes of games in the league, which is a bit of a strange stat, isn't it? Do you think is that a problem, or is it just differences in what's happening?
Yeah, I put down a lot of those kind of things to, you never know when the goals are going to come. Sometimes there's reason, sometimes there's no reason. You get yourself in position and you don't get it. I'm hoping it kind of evens itself out. It may also be partly we are playing more conservatively this year, or which has been talked about a lot. So maybe that impact also gives us less of a chance for early goals.
Yeah, it's interesting also just going back to the Wolves thing as well, just looking at their season so far. Obviously, they sit 12th in the table. They've won 4, drawn 3, lost 6. Arsenal have doubled the number of points on 30 that Wolves do. They did beat Spurs. It's worth mentioning. That was a really, obviously, quite an impressive win, although Spurs were themselves pretty ravaged by injury and suspensions, as well as they still are and will be for this game against Manchester City this weekend. So I'm not holding out too much hope for a repeat of some of the Spurs results that we've seen against City over the last few years. They lost to Fulham, of course, Monday night, which meant that they had, I suppose, less recovery time than they would usually be used to, but Arsenal kind of negated that by playing on Wednesday. There's a lot of controversy in that game. We're going to touch upon that in a second. They lost to Sheffield United. Who loses to Sheffield United? I mean, they're pretty darn terrible. And they come out with a result there. They drew against Newcastle, though, in a 2-2 draw. It's weird. They seemingly perform better, James, against better teams. So is that something that maybe we need to be cautious of?
You have to be cautious of every game in the Premier League. I mean, people always say you can lose at any time, right? I mean, it's the most competitive league in the world. It's the best league in the world for a reason. Even the bottom teams, I mean, Spurs are nothing special, but watching them, struggle against the likes of Sheffield United and teams like that, and then come out, and you could say the same thing about them. Do they just perform better against big teams? Because small clubs do better sometimes. But I'll go back to the point of their injuries, and someone else pointed out in the chat that Justice there pointed out Joao Gomez is also out. So, that's still just going to help us even more.
They also beat City as well. It's worth remembering. 2-1 result against City. They beat Spurs. They've drawn against Newcastle. But then this season, they've looking at the campaign. They lost to Man United on the opening day, but they lost to Brighton. They lost to Crystal Palace. They lost to Liverpool. They drew with Luton. They beat Man City. They've drawn with Villa is a good result. They had 10 men and they drew with Villa. They're a really strange team, and you just don't really know what you're going to get. Sorry, James, go on.
No, I'm sorry. I was talking over you. But it's just crazy how bad they've been, or how poorly they've been officiated this whole season. I think someone else pointed out earlier in the chat, like, this is the PGMOL derby because we feel like we've been slighted. But if you look at it, they have had the worst run of it from the refs. Starting with game 1, they should have never lost that against United. United were terrible. And
on Dawson, wasn't it? Yeah, I remember it. hopefully, yeah, tomorrow's game is just a clean bill of correct decisions, and that VAR doesn't need to come into it. But yeah, you're right to point out from the chat box, it is the PGMOL derby, and Arsenal hopefully will be coming through of it unscathed. But we'll have to wait and see. Garrett, there's a lot of talk in the chat box about sin bins. There's been a lot of talk about sin bins this week. Arteta was asked on it. I watched Ange Postecoglou's press conference as well, and he was very dismissive of the idea. He said, and no pun intended, but he said to just bin it, basically bin the idea that we're getting too involved in the game, we're trying to change too much about the game. What's your take on sin bins?
Yeah, I think I was on Twitter earlier on. I saw a clip of Paul Merson talking about it, and his point was kind of, people will get a sin bin and they'll just park the bus for that time. The next people looking at the clock, counting it down, being, look, lads, 4 more minutes, hold, keep the ball, and then we'll go. And I can kind of see it, to be fair. So I'm not really sure. Like, you think about it, it seems like a good idea, but I think how it would affect the games, I think that was mainly Merson's points. I'm not sure. I think it would need it would need to be looked at pretty, I think, specifically if we're going to put it in. I'm not sure it'll work, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw that from Mercer in that clip, and he brought up a point I'd not really thought about. In your head, you're thinking, well, if it's going to discourage like professional fouls, if it's going to discourage abuse of referees, etc., then okay. But is the impact that it has by introducing it having too much of an effect on the game itself and the way in which it's played? And it's very difficult, I think, to justify that. And also with the way in which decisions are now made on red cards, let alone the idea of a sin bin. You could start seeing players sin binned maybe in contentious circumstances. It splits the room. Do you then VAR whether or not you have to sin bin a player? And then obviously if a team loses because of a controversial amount of time in which they concede during that period, then there's going to be even more talk about whether or not this is the right decision going forward. So I do think I agree with Ange Postecoglou in that I think we probably do need to bin the idea in the end, because it is probably going to have too much of an impact on the game. Dave, just to get your thoughts on the idea of that? Sin bins, we see it in rugby. I think we have it in other sports, so you'll be able to tell better than me for American side of things. But what do you think about the idea of a sin bin?
If I wanted to watch hockey, I'd watch hockey. So,
of course, yes.
Put it in the bin.
So it's a no from you. Why is it just because you just think, like Garrett's highlighted, that there's too many drawbacks to it?
Yeah, the only way that I could see it as a positive, I'm not a huge fan of the extremeness of a red card in that you go down to 10 men for the whole rest of the game. But I don't have any better way to do it, and it's been done that way for quite a long time. So I think we stick with that, is my opinion.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think sometimes games can be ruined by red cards, maybe given to, in a circumstance which maybe doesn't deserve it. And there is always some contentiousness about some red cards, whether or not a tackle is a red card, whether or not a player deserves to get one. But it is obviously the punishment for serious foul play and for certain other instances as well, or being the last man, not taking the ball if you weren't going for it. There's just seemingly too many rules these days in the game, and maybe that's what needs looking at, not introducing more. We're going to go to lineups, James. I think we're starting with yours. Talk us through your selection for this game ahead of the weekend.
So it's pretty standard. I chose Tomiyasu at left back, though, because I think that with how well he's been playing, you can't sit him out. I mean, he had 2 assists. Granted, I think the one to Martinelli clearance, but
was it an assist? Did he mean it? Are we claiming he meant that?
Look, whether he meant it or not, it was gorgeous, and just the flight of the ball to meet Martinelli in stride was perfection. So I'm starting him, and it's nothing against Zinchenko. I think Zinchenko's been playing well too, but I think I agree with you. Tomiyasu's best position for us is on the left, and then White. I think White just needs to come back in. I think he's ready. That little injury he had, he's over it now. Gabriel Saliba in the middle. I thought about rotating Kivior in, but I think with this period coming up, there will be plenty of time for that. For now, we'll just stick with the solid back 4 we have. And then Rice, Havertz, Odegaard in the midfield. Again, all 3. I mean, Rice is our player of the year already. You could end the season now, and he gets my vote. Havertz with 2 goals in a row. In 2 games in a row, he's got to stay in there for me. Odegaard scored, and hopefully that just gets his confidence up too. I think that everybody's confidence is just on the up, so we're just looking really good. And then Saka Jesus and give Trossard a run in there, and he's my star man.
Lovely stuff. Are you? What's the reason behind Martinelli not being in there? Because obviously he had a good game, I thought. On
No, he did. And Martinelli is my favorite player in this team.
Mm.
So me sitting him down is literally just rotation.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Garrett, talk me through yours, mate. A couple of changes.
Yeah, so I'm going to be cautious and not bring White back in. I think, kind of off what James said, there is a lot of games coming up, and I think there's no real need to risk them. In the game of the Champions League during the week, I actually was looking at Tommy.
Oh, that was strange. Just completely lost Garrett. That was out of nowhere. It just says device is not connected. Garrett, if you can still hear us, I know you're in the background. Just leave, rejoin. I don't really know what's happened. I haven't censored him. He didn't say anything dodgy.
He didn't have Trusty in there, did he?
He didn't put Trossard in, so we got rid of him. I mean, I'm gonna have to get rid of myself in a second because neither do I. But no, while we wait for Garrett, let's go to Dave's team, and if we can get Garrett back in, then then we'll just try. Dave, talk us through it, mate.
Okay, I went a little crazy here. My first time on here, I was basically trying to pick what Mick would pick, but that's no fun. So I got a good idea what Mick's going with, and it's not this. But I also want Tommy in there, and I left him on the right for this game. I think Trossi is our best left 8 right now. I know Havertz has been playing better. It's not a knock on him, and if it's him, that's great. But I think Trossi offers us more. Nelson, okay, he is not at the level of the other forward players quite, but I feel like he's a lot closer than most people give him credit for. But we got to get the man in some games. So and I'm going to keep putting him there until we play him.
Fair enough, mate. I love it. The stubbornness of it. That's fair enough. You know, I think I like Trossard in midfield. I think it works. I think it can work. I think it's great for overloading the left-hand side and for, really kind of pinning the defence of the other team back as much as possible. And I think that's where he will eventually develop into in this Arsenal squad as he goes into his 30s. But yeah, he's one to look out for. Garrett, you've rejoined us. You've decided to come back. Would you regret your team selection or something?
No, I actually couldn't tell you what happened. I'm not too sure, but I'm back now.
Fair enough. Gremlins in the system. Let's go back and carry on from where you left off, mate.
But yeah, no, Tomiyasu at right back, I actually think he's come on leaps and bounds there, to be honest. I think you could see his link-up play with Saka is really improving. Kind of before, even the Champions League game during the week, I was kind of hesitant to put him there because I just thought the link-up was robotic. Him and Saka, it just didn't work. But I think he's shown now that, he can link up with Saka, so I think he's got to stay there, to be honest. I mean, as I said as well, I think there's no need to rush White. It's going to be busy over the next while, so I think easing back in. I mean, if I'm not wrong, the Champions League game is the first game he's played, right, since his injury?
I think he came on against Brentford at the end. I think at the end he came on, yeah. But he came off for the second half, didn't he, against Lens?
Yeah. Yeah, so just kind of easing back in. I expect him to come on in this game for sure, but I think start Tommy. Zinchenko, I think he's been good. Keep him in there. Rice goes out saying, as James said, I think, player of the season. I think that's a pretty solid bet even now. Havertz, keep going, keep the momentum going. Really, I think with him that's big. And hopefully he can get another goal. Odegaard, need to see him back in there doing his thing. Martinelli, then I think we just need to the snowball effect with him really, isn't there? I think he kind of, once he gets going, I think he is very hard to stop, and I just want to build that momentum up with him. And then Jesus, same thing. He's going to be my star man. I think he will. He's going to run the show through that middle. He's going to facilitate and score. He can score despite popular belief. And then of course Saka on the right, who everyone says he's having a slow start, but I mean, what are his stats so far? I think it's
Saka's got 17 goal contributions this season.
I mean, nothing slow about that, So that's my team, and
fair enough.
I'm gonna go for.
Yeah, fair enough. It is an interesting one to see. Again, I think the talk of Rice, like, I don't want to hype him up too much, and what I'm about to say is he's going to do exactly that. But I think he's genuinely in the bracket of players that could become Arsenal's greatest ever signing. I think like there's a real chance of that happening. I know we talk about some of the legends of Arsenal's eras, but if we're talking about an Arsenal that are aiming to be title challengers on a regular basis, trying to win the champion. I mean, if Declan Rice gets into a Champions League winning Arsenal team, you're up there with potentially, getting into a bracket of very, very high status. And it's only been a few months. That's where we're at. That is where we're at. Quite the hot take today. But let's see if it can come true. I certainly hope it will, because it would mean that we've won plenty of things with him in the team. And so, therefore, he is in mine once again. Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Gabriel Saliba, Raya, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Saka, Jesus. I know that made it sound like Raya's in the midfield. He's in goal, trust me. Yeah, it's the same 11 that played on Wednesday. I talked in an article this week about how I felt that there isn't really a best Arsenal 11 at the moment, which is a good thing. You don't necessarily want to have a best 11, especially when you want to rotate and deal with injuries as often as Arsenal have to. But I think there is something to be said about maybe having some consistency for this game, especially for Havertz. I think that an opportunity to give him another goal to continue building that momentum is always going to be really, really important. But elsewhere, I think everyone speaks for itself. I think the boys have summed it up fantastically well for every player that we've got in the selection. So I hope that this is what we see on Saturday. I have a feeling that it might be. Maybe Trossard comes in, but we've got that game against Luton on Tuesday. So maybe we see some rotation for the trip to Kenilworth Road, which I am going to be making, and it's going to be a very cold night in a very small stadium, so I'm very interested to see what it's like there, but I'm excited for it. Right, let's end the show with predictions. So James, we start with you. Scoreline and scorers, please.
I'm going to go 3-0. We're going to go Trossard with 1, Jesus with 1, and Odegaard with 1.
Lovely stuff. Dave?
I'm also going to say 3-0, even though that I'm not allowed to do that. But I'm saying
why are you not allowed to do that? What's wrong with that?
It's my personal rule. Anyways.
Oh, yeah. It's like if you want to order something on a menu, you can't order the same thing. Yeah, it's that
thing. Jesus with a brace to shut up the haters. And Nelson gets him 1. Now I got Trossi as a player of the game, so you can figure out where all the assists are going.
There you go. Lovely stuff. Garrett?
Yeah, I'm going to go for 3-0. I thought we may concede 1, but I think with Neto gone, and I think they're like Wolves are like 11th for goals scored. So yeah, I'm going to go 3-0. I'm going to go Jesus, Odegaard, and Martinelli.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to go 3-0. I've got to go 3-0, haven't I? Because it seems to be the thing to do. I'm going to go with a couple for Havertz, just because I just will it again. Keep willing it into existence. More goals for him, and Ben White screamer from the bench, please. Just to finish things off. Yeah, 3-0 to the Arsenal. Absolutely, it'd be great to see another significant. I think we need to continue building up that goal difference for us, because I think it will certainly matter come the end of the season potentially if us and Man City are going to the wire, and maybe even Liverpool in there, of course, as well. Steve says 3-1 Arsenal, Havertz, Saka, and TT. Canterbury Gooner says 2-1 to the Arsenal. Keith says 4-1 to the Arsenal. Rand says 3-1 Arsenal, Havertz, Jesus, and Rice. Boston says 3-0 to the Arsenal. Amira says 2-0 Arsenal. Tommy Cafu and White with a screamer each from the halfway line. Wolves says, and Wolves Fancast joining as well. Good friends of the show, of course. I've hopped over with the guys over there, Little Dan, fantastic. Make sure you're checking out the channel. I'm sure they've got lots of preview content ahead of the game. So lots of 3-0s in there. You've got the team talk ready, I assume. Arsenal fans are showing a lot of hubris ahead of this game. They're very confident. They have reason to be fair. And I think you'll struggle to see too much optimism around Wolves, considering the amount of suspensions and players that are missing and the record that they've had previously as well. But I wish them the best for the rest of the season, because I do enjoy seeing Wolves in the Premier League. Lone Star Londoner says 1-0 Arsenal, and J Law says 3-1 with I haven't got any scorers yet, but let's just say they're all Ben White screamers, and that will be the perfect way to end the show. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in the chat box. Really appreciate your time. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe, and show our panel plenty of love in the comment section as well. James, thank you so much for your time, mate. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Tell people where they can find you. Yeah,
it's always a pleasure, Tom. Find us in the Discord. I post videos of this guy in there sometimes because Tom loves them. So,
do indeed. Very jealous. The worst allergy in the world's having an allergy to dogs, meaning you can't have one, because that is exactly what I would have in my life. Garrett has lost himself again. Oh, he's back. There he is. Thank you, Garrett, for your time, mate. Thank you for joining us. I'm hoping your laptop is going to be able to survive your outro.
Yeah, no, I actually don't know what's happening. I wish I did, but yeah, no, as always, yeah, join up to the Discord. It's good chat now. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having
Dave,
me on.
finally, thank you for your time, mate. Always a pleasure. Tell people they can find you, mate.
In the Discord and at about 7:30 a.m. right here.
There you go.
Every day.
Every day. Every day. Yeah, it's a 3 p.m. kickoff tomorrow, of course. So a lot easier for fans. I know in America as well, you got an early one for that, I suppose. But still, I think 3 p.m. kickoffs are quite nice. Way better than 12:30, like midday kickoffs, which are awful. Very early in the morning indeed. But yeah, 3s are not too bad. You can still get your drink on, I guess, at what, 9 in the morning. Sometimes I know the guys in Chicago certainly do for those 3 p.m.s. But it's going to be an exciting game, I'm sure. It's going to be fantastic to see. Hopefully, more goals from the likes of Kai Havertz, etc., and getting Arsenal continually at the top of the table for an extended period of time, maybe all the way through to the end of the season. We can hope. Drop a like, subscribe. We'll see you again very, very soon. Have a fantastic day, evening, afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. And as always, up the Arsenal.